So what if you knew Jesus would be stopping by your house today at noon? What would you do about that to get ready? Well, Jesus did say he would return. We just don't know when. So how can you prepare right now? Jesus said, be ready. Good morning and welcome to 755 Live. For about 5 minutes, you'll hear all about easy to remember soundbite versions of what Jesus said. And the point is to help you experience life to the fullest, the Jesus way. Today's Jesus Said comes from Matthew 24, verses 42 through 44, where Jesus said, "So you too must keep watch, for you don't know what day your Lord is coming. Understand this. If a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, he would keep watch and not permit his house to be broken into. You also must be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when least expected." So those are the verses that inspired the soundbite today, be ready. And before we talk about that, first let's look at some context about what Jesus was talking about here in Matthew 24. This discourse was a response to two questions that the disciples had asked about the end time. So let's jump up a few verses here to verse 3. As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately and said, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" So the disciples are asking, when will this happen? And then what will be the sign of your coming? Now, especially in the news right now in the Middle East, I mean, the signs of the times are everywhere. And Jesus said to keep watch because we don't know when he is coming. Now, what is happening right now in the news is very, very troubling. But every single generation has thought the troubles of their day were these signs that Jesus was talking about. In the Middle Ages, in the mid-1800s, in 1988, remember the 88 reasons that he was going to return, and then 89 reasons in 89. Then there were the blood moons of 2014-15. It became a popular book, number 4 on the bestsellers list, but nothing happened. There have been threats of nuclear Armageddon in the news over and over and over. And yes, right now it's pretty scary. I mean, but could we be watching for the wrong things? How did Jesus say to watch for his coming? Well, a few chapters later, in the garden before his crucifixion, he tells the disciples to watch. In Matthew 26:38, he told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." And all he was asking them to do was to pray for an hour or so, and the disciples took a nap instead. Verse 40 and 41 says, "Then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep, and he said to Peter, 'Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray, so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak.'" Now, the analogies that Jesus used to include watching and waiting are very similar to what a servant does, watching and waiting to see what needs to be done next. Very similar to this passage in Isaiah 40:31. "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Waiting is not just passively, waiting. It is an action like a servant is waiting to see what they need to do for their master. You see, waiting is actually acting in faith. And that waiting, that's where the renewal is, and where we can run and not walk. It's not about sitting and doing nothing, but serving in obedience. So how can we be ready and be waiting for his coming? Well, back to Matthew 24, verse 45. Jesus said, "A faithful, sensible servant is one to whom the master can give the responsibility of managing his other household servants and feeding them. So how can you be ready for Jesus to return right now? Well, what are you watching for? We should watch for Jesus, not the Antichrist or sin going crazy. Watch for Jesus and manage and feed the household, the least of these. You see, if what's happening in the Middle East right now is the signs of the end of times, my job and your job is still the same. Be ready. And how do we know we're ready? Well, by how we treat the least of these. Jesus said, be ready. How can you put that into action today? Thank you so much for listening. If this is meaningful to you, it does mean a lot if you like it, if you share it, if you comment. I really appreciate you. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I hope this time together helps you live life to the fullest, the Jesus way. And remember, follow Jesus today. Love first.